In this section, we're going to teach you about another really popular Agile framework called Kanban. Kanban is similar to Scrum in that it provides and focuses on providing early value to the organization while also having collaborative and self-managing teams. This actually all started with Toyota back in the 1940s. They wanted a way to more visually understand their workflow and the work items and to more easily identify bottlenecks in that workflow. So they created the Kanban framework. Now, over the years, this has been adopted and adjusted and refined, so it's definitely not the same Kanban that was in the 1940s, but it's always good to know kind of where it started and why it got created. Today, a lot of software companies and different organizations utilize Kanban to help them achieve value in their various projects that they're working on. But where I want to actually start is the 4 basic principles of Kanban. This is really the heart and soul of the framework. So the first one is start with what you do now. What Kanban is saying here is, hey, you don't have to conform your whole organization around Kanban like you have to do with some Agile frameworks such as Scrum. Instead, Kanban will come and form to your organization. So start with what you do now. The second thing is agree to pursue incremental change. You have to understand, if you're doing a waterfall type of approach, you're going to get a huge amount of value, but there's going to be a huge amount of time that is kind of wasted or utilized to provide that huge amount of value. Kanban and Agile in general is really looking at incremental changes, delivering value more often, but in much smaller increments, and then incrementing on that change and building upon that change to build out that big piece of value. The third basic principle of Kanban is to respect current processes, roles, responsibilities, and titles. Simply, this is saying you don't need to change everything with your organization to match Kanban. You don't have to make new roles and have people learn new responsibilities. Instead, you can utilize what you have and still use the Kanban framework, which is very, very intriguing for many organizations. And the fourth basic principle is encourage acts of leadership at all levels. This comes down to the self-managing teams. Self-managing teams mean that the team really doesn't have one overlooker, right? They don't have one manager that's watching them and keeping them on task. Instead, they are managing themselves. If they need assistance, they're reaching out and getting assistance. If there's some type of negotiation or issue that's happening as part of the project, they are all involved in that and helping to direct that in the correct way. So Kanban is really looking and saying, hey, be mature and really encourage those acts of leadership from your team members. So those are the 4 basic principles of Kanban. Now, the most iconic thing for Kanban is the visual aspect, and in this case, it's the Kanban board and Kanban cards. The Kanban board helps to show status of the various work items as well as any of the bottlenecks that may be occurring throughout the project and those work items being completed. Kanban cards, they house the details of that particular work item. They house details of what that work item is, maybe when it's due. Obviously, the status is derived from the column, so that's not usually noted directly on the card, but it's in the particular column for that status, as well as any dates and times that that particular card has moved from one status to another. So let's kind of take a step back. So Kanban boards, they can be both physical or virtual. Physical meaning it's a board inside of some type of office room. It's a whiteboard that's been, with markers drawn into a Kanban board, and then you use sticky notes or some type of note cards with a tack pin or note cards with a piece of tape that are actually hanging those Kanban cards in the appropriate column of the Kanban boards. So that's the physical side. From a virtual side, you can use various applications. My favorite application to utilize for Kanban is Trello. It's Trello.com, Trello.com, and it's a completely free application where you can do basic Kanban inside of that application. Another very popular one is Jira. Jira is a little bit bigger. It's a premium one. It's not free. You have to pay for it. But a lot of organizations that utilize Kanban will use Jira or maybe some other type of premium software to track. So it doesn't matter what piece of software you're utilizing. The look and the feel are going to be different, but the concepts of Kanban are going to be the same. So let's walk through and let's assume that this board is a physical Kanban board. So these columns are drawn onto a whiteboard where our Agile team resides, where our Agile team is working, and our Kanban cards are sticky notes that are put up on that board in the appropriate column. In this case, everything's in the to-do. Now, as a team member working on this, I don't get assigned or tasked with work items with Kanban cards. Instead, I go out there, and Kanban is considered a pull methodology, meaning that I go out there and I pull work. I make a determination as to what is the highest priority and what task needs to be completed next. So I look at my Kanban board, and generally, regardless if it's physical or virtual, most teams will have the Kanban card set up from the top being the most priority, the bottom being the least priority. So as we look here, the highest priority sticky notes or cards that we have in this case are setting up a meeting with Frank, updating some server requirements, and as we move on, creating a process flow chart, ordering lunch, etc. So usually it's top priority on down. And it's not always like a list, right? Because I may not be able to do a code review, which is one of the items on this list. So you don't want like a 1 through 10 type of thing. You want a generalized priority, a general idea if this is a higher priority or a lower priority, so you know what to choose. So anyways, I'm a Kanban team member. I need to pull some work. I need to do something. And I look through here. I'm not really sure what this meeting with Frank is all about, so I'm going to skip that one. Server requirements document, not really my cup of tea. The networking guy is going to probably handle that one. Create a process flow chart. I can do that. That is a good one for me. It's a higher priority. It's towards the top. So I'm going to go ahead and assign this task to me. I'm going to take ownership of this task and getting it completed. On a physical board, I would walk up, I'd grab that sticky note, I'd pull it off, and I'd simply stick it in the doing column. Now that task is assigned to me. Now with a virtual board, you're going to have all your dates and times and who did it audited automatically, right? It's automatically going to track that so you can pull that later for some things that we will need. On a physical board, a little bit more difficult. What I've seen a lot of people do to try to track those dates and times that these cards are moved from one status to another is to actually flip that card over and on the back of it write their name, the date and time, and what the status was changed to. That way they're tracking when it was moved to doing and when it was moved to done. I've also seen a lot of organizations that do it that way. When they create the initial card and they put it in the to-do column, they do the same thing. They write the name of the person that created the work item, that particular card. They write the date and the time, and that it's a status of to-do. So when you look at the back of those cards, you can see the audit trail of what that card did from date and from date to date or over time, and kind of see how that card evolved and moved through the various statuses. So I've taken ownership of that particular work item. Now once I get done with that work item, I would simply go grab the work item and physically move it to the done column. In a virtual board, same type of thing, like what you saw me do on the screen. In a virtual board, it's a lot of click and dragging to another column. The physical board, obviously, got to walk up to it and remove the item and move it over to another column. But don't forget, I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to write my name, the date and the time, and the updated status on the back of that card. Well, I've completed my process flowchart. Next, now I need to do another task. So I'm going to look at these tasks, and maybe ordering lunch is important. Maybe it's 10 a.m. now. We have a lunch meeting at 12:30 in which we're ordering lunch for the team, and we're going to have kind of an in-house training or what have you. And so I need to order lunch for that particular meeting. So let's go ahead and take that. And we're going to move that to the doing. We're going to flip that card over, write our name, the date, the time, and the updated status for our audit records. And you just keep going through this. Now, this Kanban board isn't just for me. All team members, the network guy, maybe he comes out and says, oh yeah, I'm going to update those server requirements. I'm going to do that. Set him a meeting with Frank. Maybe Betty, who has needs to get more information from Frank had put that work item out there, and she goes ahead and takes ownership of that particular task. So these tasks are moving, being created, put in the to-do column, moving to the doing and the done, and everything is just very fluid. Everybody's taking ownership, and they're working to get that particular work item started and completed. Now, one thing to reiterate on the Kanban cards is these cards aren't going to house just the words of what that particular work item is and the dates and times of the status moves. They also can house other details such as deadlines. They also can house different details like references to other materials that can be utilized to complete that particular task. Now, those references are a lot easier to do in a virtual board where you can actually attach documents or attach links to that particular card inside that online application, rather than a physical board where you're kind of writing note as to where to find those details, because you obviously can't have an actual link to it when it's a physical card taped or stuck up onto a Kanban board. So I just wanted to make sure that that was absolutely clear. Kanban cards won't just have the details, they'll also have other information on them, and that information is going to vary depending on the various organizations you work with and work for. Because remember, Kanban conforms to the organization it's going to. It doesn't have that organization conform to it. The next thing we're going to talk about is the 6 general practices of Kanban. This is going to be a little similar to the principles, which is kind of the core, but the 6 general practices will make a little bit more sense now that you understand what a Kanban board is and kind of how that interaction works with the team. So number 1 general practice for Kanban is visualize the workflow. I think that's pretty obvious. You can visualize the workflow on that Kanban board. Whether it's physical or digital, it doesn't matter. You can see those cards move. You can see them be created. You can see them move from the various statuses, and you can see where they're at any given time. And that visualization is very important. Seeing a spreadsheet with IDs of different tasks and dates and whatnot, that doesn't mean a lot to people. You really have to analyze it to understand it. But seeing a physical board, a picture, if you will, of what's happening can really open your eyes to some potential bottlenecks or problems or issues that the team is running into or is going to run into, and you can then help to try to avoid those. So number 1 is visualize the workflow. Number 2 is limit the work in progress, or also known as the WIP. We haven't talked a lot about this, but with Kanban, you have that to-do column, you've got the doing and the done column. The key thing here is you don't want to just take all those to-do items and move them to doing, because when you have that many items in progress, you're not actually working on all of them at the same time. Instead, you want to take items and limit the amount of them that you have in progress so people can focus on the particular items and get them finished. The thing about Kanban is stop starting, start finishing. It's not about starting a million tasks, it's about completing tasks, delivering those small amounts of incremental value to the organization. So number 2, limit your work in progress. Number 3 is manage the flow. With the Kanban board being visual, it's a lot easier to identify issues and problems in that particular flow, bottlenecks, or things that are holding up tasks from being completed. So the 3rd general practice is really manage the flow of those items. Make sure that the items are continuing to be flown from status to status with ease and efficiency. Number 4 is make policies explicit. What this is referring to is Kanban is really a framework that can be structured to your organization. It can be adjusted. Well, with that, there's not a lot of structure or rules or policies that Kanban is really forcing on people. Instead, Kanban is saying to the organization, you come up with those policies. You decide when you move things from various statuses and the various policies and procedures that you'll have in place to help manage that full workflow for Kanban. So Kanban is saying make those policies explicit. Write them down. Make sure everybody's aware of when you move tasks, or how you manage block tasks or tasks that are in progress but are stuck. By having those policies explicitly documented, not only will it make it easier for everybody in the team to ensure that they're following the same type of process, but it also helps continue to move those tasks as efficient as possible. Number 5 is all about implementing feedback loops. So if we think back to Scrum, Scrum has sprints or time boxes in which you're going through and you're completing a set of work, and then at the end of that sprint, you're able to look back and say, how did we do? Are there changes we need to make as a team? Anything like that? Well, with Kanban, you really don't have set sprints. I mean, you may have some structure set up there for the organization if that's what the organization likes, but it's not really necessary. This can be a fluid type of process. Things are always added to the to-dos, and they're moved throughout the various statuses based on where that work item is, and you just keep moving. As you move it to done, you're releasing it out to the users, the production environment, getting the value from that as you start on your next task and you're moving through. So what I'm saying is it's a really fluid process. There's not a good place to do those feedback loops. So this is a general practice in here to make sure that you don't forget about them. Feedback loops are really important to give feedback to the team and to get feedback so you can make adjustments to make the overall process better. Now, the main question I get asked is, well, when do we do this? If we're not doing like a time box, a structure, a really set structure on a sprint, how do we handle these feedback loops? Well, the easiest way I've seen it done is, number one, you still have your daily stand-up. 15 minutes, you're looking at the Kanban board, people are discussing what they're working on, that work in progress, and it really helps to have the full team understand what everybody's doing as you're looking at that visual board and talking to people about what they accomplished yesterday, what they're working on today, and any type of roadblocks or problems they're running into. And the other thing that you can do is you can still set up like a retrospective, and this would just be a cadenced meeting, a meeting that happens every 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month or whatever works for your organization and your particular project team, where you get together with the team and you just discuss overall, how are things going? Are there issues? Are there things that we can adjust to make things easier, etc.? So you still want to make sure that you're implementing those feedback loops even if you're utilizing a very fluid Kanban process. And number 6 is collaborate for improvement, evolve experimentally. What this is alluding to is you don't take a task and just work that solo all the time. There's times where tasks, you need other people. You need to collaborate. You have to have a discussion about how you're going to handle that particular work item, how it's going to be completed. And so what this is saying is collaborate for improvement, collaborate together to make sure that that task is done appropriately and done in the right way. Experiment with different ways of doing it and accomplishing it, and then test those results and see if that actually was successful. So collaborate to make a good decision as to how to accomplish it, and then evolve experimentally. Learn from different experiments, things you fail on, things you succeed on, and understand what works and what doesn't for other future work item tasks. Kanban has some key metrics that it likes to utilize to understand how those tasks are flowing. You can visually see the tasks flow from the to-do, doing, done, and watch them. You can easily see bottlenecks, but metrics help to also give a bigger picture as to how is everything flowing, and is there areas of improvement and areas of adjustment that can help everything move a little bit smoother, a little bit faster. So some of the key metrics that are common in Kanban are lead time and cycle time. These are pretty much prevalent in every single Kanban through all organizations. Now, there's a lot of other metrics that could be measured. These are the two that we're going to hammer on because of their popularity and some of the kind of common nature in which they're utilized. Lead time is all about the full time from the time that task was created and put into that to-do column, so that initial date, till the date that it was completed. So as it moved through the to-do column to the doing column to the done column, how long was that? Cycle time is a little bit shorter. This is from the time it was picked up until the time it was completed. So for the cycle time, we don't care about how much time from the time it was created and put in the to-do until it was moved to the doing. Instead, we're only looking at from the time it was a doing to the time it was marked in progress until the time it was completed. And that's called cycle time. So as you can see in our example here, let's say that our task was created, 9 days later it was put into the doing column, the work was started, and then 5 days later after that, it was moved to the done column. Well, the lead time, the full lead time, is 14 days. That's the time it was from creation to completion. Cycle time in this case would be 5 days. That would be the time from in progress until done. So just remember, lead time, the full time of that work item, cycle time, how long it takes for us to cycle through an in progress to get it to complete. Now, these metrics are really important because they can help to identify areas of issue. So if you're having too many items that are work in progress, your cycle times are going to be crazy. You're going to have really long cycle times for a lot of different tasks. It's going to show that you're not really focusing on one particular item. You have too many items in progress. Maybe that's because you like to start and not finish, which is a bad thing. You want to make sure you're finishing as much as you can. Maybe it's because you keep hitting roadblocks or you're waiting for a certain resource to be available to help you. And so you have to kind of table that one as an in-progress item and grab another one to start working on. Well, it's good for that to be identified so they can get another resource to help out or free up that resource a little bit more so the cycle time for the overall work items isn't quite as long. So these metrics are really important to track and to take advantage of any adjustments that can be done to improve your overall processes. Now, with these metrics in mind, having a digital or a virtual board is going to be a ton easier. It's automatically tracking those dates and times, who moved it, and so your cycle and your lead times can be created pretty easily. You can create a report and pull it out. Or for most of the different online applications, you can just utilize their canned reports and pull the data out to get your lead time and your cycle time. So it's pretty quick and painless. Now with the physical board, that gets a little harder. You have the dates and the times written on the back of that card or the back of that sticky note. Somebody needs to physically go through, flip them all over, write all those dates and times down, so then they can generate a report that's going to provide the lead time and cycle time. Since this is done normally on a weekly basis, that can be a lot of wasted time getting that set up. So most teams nowadays that I see that utilize Kanban are utilizing the digital or the virtual boards to give them that auditing. Now the one thing they miss with the physical board, if you've never used a physical Kanban board, it's so exhilarating to be able to take that sticky note of that card and move it from doing to done. It feels so good. It feels like you've accomplished something and you feel great walking up and moving it to complete. So that is a great feeling that you can't really get in the digital side. You're going into a computer and moving the card. It still feels good, but not as good as a physical board. So one adaptation I've seen a team do that was pretty ingenious actually is they used Trello, which is a digital Kanban board. I'm actually going to be showing a demo of it in the next lecture, but they used Trello. And so they have their digital board, but they had a smart board that was inside of their room. So they had Trello up on the smart board. And so people could either go on their computer if they're not at the office, not in that room, and they could move the cards and everybody would see those cards moving through the process flow and they would get the audits. Or if people were in the room, they could do it on their computer, or they could walk up to the smart board. And the smart board, if you don't know, it's like a touch screen. So they can go up and they can physically move those cards with their finger to the next column. So that was a way, like a really cool adaptation to give the benefits of a digital board while also empowering those people that are on site with some type of physical board. Now what Vivek and I want to do is demo some of the most popular digital Kanban boards to you. We're going to talk about Trello and Jira. Trello, at least from a consumer standpoint, I don't know about organizations utilizing it, but from a consumer standpoint, it's absolutely free. You can hop out there, you can create your own Kanban board, you can create your own Kanban cards, and you can start using it today at no charge. And it's not like a trial, it's free forever. There's just some features that are behind a paywall if you decide that those are necessary. So we're going to be demoing Trello to you, as well as Vivek's going to demo Jira to you. I alluded to Jira a little bit earlier. It's more of a premium type of Kanban board, and as well as other things, but it has a Kanban board built into it, and this is more of a premium version. You'll see a lot of bigger organizations using applications such as Jira. So for this lecture, let's jump right into our Trello demonstration. So here's Trello. It's pretty simple. I've already created a board. I've called it Demo. You see it right here. We have 3 statuses or 3 columns on our Kanban board. In Trello, they're called lists. We have a to-do, doing, and done. Pretty simple, same as the demo that we showed you earlier. Now, to create cards, you simply add a card. I know that we were going to create a process flowchart, and we just didn't put a lot of details in there. We're going to create a process flowchart. I know we had another one in here to order some lunch and to set, I think his name was Steve. We were setting a meeting with Steve, where some of the common ones we had done in our previous demo. So creating cards is really that simple. Obviously, you'd want to put a little bit more details than what I have in here, but these are just examples. Now, if you don't want to put more details, let's say in the name of it, you can simply click into the card after it's created, and you can add in a description, you can put in comments, you can add attachments, due dates, add a lot of different members, different team members to it if you're working with the team. There's a ton of stuff you can do in here, but I could come in here in the description and put in, we're going to be ordering from this restaurant, it's got to be here at this time, here's the orders of all the people, and then we could accomplish that to-do item, that work item, order lunch, and get that completed. So we're going to order from Jimmy John's, which is a US-based sub chain, and so we got Jimmy John's in there. We've got more details. We can go ahead and close out. Now, when we pick up that task, same as a physical board, we're going to go ahead and take that Kanban card. We're going to slide it on over, click and drag it to our doing list or our doing status. Now we are ordering lunch. That's our work in progress. And so if we go into the card, we can see that we were the one that created it. We can see that we were the one that moved it from to do to doing, and that tells you how long ago that was done. So there's a lot of auditing that's automatically done with this. Now we work on it. Maybe I've got to add some comments in here. Maybe I add team members and ask everybody to add a comment to the card with what they would like from Jimmy John's, and I need their order by such and such a date. And everybody, we collaborate together to put all the details in there. We complete it, and then maybe I actually complete the order for lunch to Jimmy John's and I move it to done. So a digital or a virtual Kanban board is very similar to a physical one. It just has some automatic auditing that's built in as well. So one cool feature that I want to mention is inside of the cards, you can actually put attachments. And if you do image attachments, Trello will show those on the card. So this can be very useful for organizations that have a lot of to-do items. Trying to find certain to-do items with text can be a little tedious at times. And so if it makes sense from an attachment standpoint or from a task standpoint, you can attach an image. So let's go ahead and do an attachment. And let's just snag one of our logo images here and put it on there. This is just to show you. So here's our image on the card. But what I want to show you is if you close out, if you go here, you can see our logo actually portrayed on that image. And so if you're creating a process flowchart, you could have the other process flowchart on there. You can have documents as to what that process looks like, and etc. So you can put a lot of different attachments, and it really changed the look and the feel of those various Kanban cards. Obviously, there's a lot of bells and whistles to Trello that we're not going to cover. I wanted to at least give you the base demo of kind of how it works. I highly recommend you hop out to Trello.com, Trello.com, create a free account, and then go ahead and create a board. Then you simply can create your lists, and you can utilize this for your professional or your personal activities that need to get completed. You can put your various chores on here for your house. You can put different tasks on here for work, however you want to do it. But I think that utilizing it, even if you're not using Kanban currently at work, utilizing this for your own personal items will really help you to get used to the concept of seeing your to-do list, choosing the next high priority item, going ahead and taking ownership of that and moving that to in progress, limiting those number of works in progress, and then moving them to done. Now that you have a good understanding of how Trello works from a base functionality standpoint, now we're going to create some actual user stories out there in Trello utilizing the XLR8 sample user stories that we provided earlier in the course. It's highly recommended as we go through this that you follow along and actually create your own Trello board and go through creating these user stories. Not only will it help you retain the information a little better, but it'll help you work through how to interact with the Trello software and how you can create cards and move them along to the various processes. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create a board. We need to create a board for our XLR8 project. So let's hop over here. We go up in the upper left-hand corner and click Boards. We click on Create New Board. And I'm going to name this XLR8 Project. I'm going to create that board. Awesome. Now it's created the board. It did some random background. I guess we'll leave the stars there. And it did automatically create a to-do, doing, and done for us. So we've got that. If it did not create a to-do, doing, and done on yours, go ahead and do that. Create those lists, simply clicking into them and typing to-do, doing, and done. Now that we have our base board set up, now I want to walk through and actually create some of these user stories. So we're going to start with user story number 1, and right here we're in the title. For user stories inside of Kanban, generally you go ahead and type out that full user story in the card, so it's visible right there. So we can type, as a startup founder, be able to create an account on XLR8 website so that I can join the XLR8 community of investors, mentors, and angel investors. Perfect. So we've created that user story. The one thing here though is we have acceptance criteria we need to put in there. So I'm going to go ahead and click into that story. Generally, companies will put the acceptance criteria in Trello right inside the description. So to save some time, I'm actually going to come out here and I'm going to copy paste this right in there. So now we have an acceptance criteria and we have our details below. So we're going to go ahead and click Save. Now we can close out. So we have our first user story created here. Let's go ahead and create user story number 2. As a startup founder, I want to be able to log into the XLR8 website. So that I can access the XLR8 content and community. Perfect. We've got that all set. Now we can come into it. And we've got our acceptance criteria and we have some other notes. So I'm going to grab all of that, put it in here. Obviously when you copy paste sometimes it doesn't look real good, so kind of clean it up a little bit. Good. So we've got that. We've got our details inside of here. Now we can go ahead and close out of this card. So now we've documented our first 2 user stories out here. Let's actually jump down to number 3. We also are going to add this one, and we're going to add this picture. The picture is available as an attachment on this lecture as a resource. There's actually 3 of them out there. As part of the card, so we can see that there's a wireframe for this particular website. Then we're going to go ahead and jump down to user story number 5, and we're going to create another card. Grammar about it. Go 5 user stories out here, and of course your project would have a lot more, but I just want to go through and get these added out here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move each of these through the process. So let's say that we're going to jump out here, and I'm going to correct this spelling mistake on able. And I'm going to get rid of my extra 2. So I'm going to correct those. To correct it, you just simply click into it. And when you get here, it looks like you can't type over it, but you can click in and adjust anything that you need to. So it's simple as click in editing as necessary. So anyways, we're going to grab this one, and we're going to pull it across to doing. We're going to take ownership of this particular user story. Now, as we're working on this story, we may come out here, we may add some comments, we may be adding some different attachments and wireframes and whatnot, whatever it takes for us to get this story completed. Once we are able to get it completed, then we can move it to our done column, as long as it now meets the definition of done that we set up at the beginning of the project. Assuming it does, we can move it to the done column. And now that we're done with that work item, we can grab our next work item and pull it over. We would do the same thing, add any attachments, comments, due dates, whatever we need to do throughout the life of this user story and getting it complete. And then once we meet the definition of done, we can move it over to the done column. So now, as part of an activity, what I'd like you to do is jump back to the do column. So create additional Trello cards for user stories 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So it'll be 5 additional user stories. And go ahead and put them out here in the to-do column. Don't worry about adding acceptance criteria or additional attachments unless you're really interested in doing that. We just want you to go out here and create the card and write that user story. Now, a big point, a big note is don't copy paste the user story. It's a good habit to get into to write those user stories as I want to, so that make sure that you're writing them out. So as you're typing it out, you're going through that cadence and you're remembering that critical user story structure. So again, jump out here, create cards in Trello for 5 user stories, 12, 13, 14, and 15, and 16 from our XLR8 sample user stories document.
We're looking at a Jira board where we have 2 existing boards, but we're looking at how to create a Kanban board. As you look at it, it says create a project. So I'm creating a project called MD Weight Loss Kanban. There's an option to have an open board or limited one or private board. Jira just gives you 3 basic options whenever you start a Kanban board. So what we're going to do is we're going to add one more column that's called a review. This column will be for the product manager to review the stories once the developer finishes their story. And we're also going to add another column called ready. This column is there for developers to pick up the work from. So to do is everything, and ready will have only the things that are ready to be picked up by the developers. So this is our Kanban board. To do, ready, in progress, review, and done. Let's look at how to create some stories. So the user story here is for creating a landing page for the MD weight loss website. You can add a description. As a patient, I want to be able to go to MD weight loss website so that I can learn about their services for my weight loss needs. And I've saved it. And I can put a note of adding acceptance criteria later. So let's look at some of the acceptance criteria. It just means these are the conditions for acceptance. So a website should have a landing page with a welcome message. Website should have services page and pricing page. And lastly, website should have clinic phone number, working hours, and address. And in Jira, you can literally just slide these stories to different columns. So if I want to have 3 user stories, I'll move these 3 user stories to ready column. As the work is being done, it goes from left to right to done. So one thing that we can do is set up WIP limits. So we are looking at a full Kanban board. We have 8 items in to do, 4 items on ready, 3 in progress, 2 in review, and 1 is done. So let's look at the in progress column. This could actually mean that there are 3 developers working because the working progress limit is 3, usually 1 per person. This is a pull approach. Developers are working on 3 highest priority items decided by the product manager. And as these are completed, this is put in review, and product manager reviews the stories here and then approves it and says, okay, this is done, I accept it. And as team members complete the user story, they actually look at the ready column, and these are the prioritized column of user stories, and they will pick up another story. Now, this column actually just turned yellow, and the reason is because the max WIP limit is 3. So whenever there are 4 stories in this column, it turns yellow, indicating that team members should remove one of the blockers that they might have had, or they should take one of the stories back to do or ready. The same thing can happen if you add more than 3 stories on review too. So because there are 5 items now, WIP limit has been maxed out, and it indicates that product managers should immediately respond, look at some of these stories, review some of these stories, and get these 2 done. Another thing you can do is change this working progress limit, and you can just do that by clicking here. Set the column limit, and let's say somehow we realize 3 is a better WIP limit. We can change this to 3, and we can save this.
Now, one thing to remember with Kanban, Kanban is looking to adjust its framework to match the processes and whatnot of the organization that's adopting that framework. And so this Kanban board, everything that we've shown you has been to do, doing, and done. And that is the base Kanban board that is recommended. It's to do, doing, and done, 3 statuses. But because Kanban is looking to conform to your organization, these really could be anything. You could have 6 different columns with statuses, and those statuses could be created, approved, in progress, testing, moved to production, or done. So you could have a lot of different statuses and really conform it to how your organization handles that. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you utilize different statuses and columns in your Kanban board is you generally are going to still be using those key metrics for Kanban, the lead time and the cycle time. While lead time will still generally be from creation to completion, cycle time may be a little different. You may have from in progress through testing and to done. So you may have an extra status in there which is still accounting for that cycle time. So it's just something you have to think through and make a conscious, explicit policy or decision on. What is cycle time to us? What is considered a time when that work is in progress until it's actually done, to really track that cycle time. So I just want to take a moment and just say that to do, doing, and done is not how all Kanban boards are set up. And quite frankly, most organizations don't have it set up so simply. They usually have some other testing or approval phases in there. And so when you move it through, you get it to those different pieces. So I wanted to make sure that towards the end of this section, I at least let you know that, and so you can conform that to meet your needs or the needs of your organization. Another concept that I at least wanted to touch on is the concept of Kanban swim lanes. Swim lanes in Kanban are utilized to group tasks together. This could be grouping them together based on the department that's going to be responsible for completing them. It could be grouped together based on the title or responsibilities of the person or people that are going to be completing them. You could have grouped based on high priority, medium priority, low priority, whatever you want to do. You can group however you want. And the swim lanes are done in a different way for every organization. So in the example on the screen, I've got our physical board or our digital board. It's got some coloring, and so it's got red, green, and blue. You can very faintly see that on the image, but that could be utilized to set up a different swim lane. So that red could mean highest priority items, green means medium priority, and blue means not a lot of priority here. Low value items, work them as you kind of can. And so that can be used to group them. So those swim lanes, you can get really fancy with these or really simple. On a physical board, it could just literally be a few lines that make almost like a tic-tac-toe board, if you will, for your Kanban board. And then you have your different categories and groupings. And you want to do this sometimes if you have a big team. And let's say you have network people in the team, you have developers in the team, architects, business analysts, what have you. And so everybody's working, everybody's got their tasks in the to-do column. Well, it can be overwhelming sometimes. Like, there's a lot of tasks out here and I'm not responsible for 90% of them. So it can be helpful to break them apart a little bit into different groupings, and so you kind of know where to look for your to-do items that are coming up. So there's a lot more to do with swim lanes, but I at least want to introduce the concept to you, so in case you hear anything about it inside of the working world, you understand what Kanban swim lanes are. Quite simply, they're there to help group tasks together based on different similarities. Now, as we finish up the section on Kanban, I wanted to leave you with 3 steps to get started with Kanban. Whether this is for you personally or for your organization, doesn't matter. Here are the steps that you can follow to start using Kanban today. The first thing is to visualize your work. Break down every step from start to finish and create a column or a lane for each of those steps. So determine what is your process and what are those various stages that those work items need to go through. Write down those tasks that you need to accomplish separately. So whether that's on a virtual card in some type of application like Jira or Trello, or a physical card like a note card, sticky note that you're going to utilize, write those all down. And then as you work through, move the tasks from left to right. Left is to do, to the right is done. So regardless if you're using the to do, doing, done, or if you've made up your own statuses, you want them to go in order from least complete on the left all the way to the most complete on the right. Step number 2, limit your work in progress. If you have a lot of work in progress, you're not going to be accomplishing much. And remember, Kanban's all about stop starting, start finishing. You need a complete task. Complete the task so you can realize the value from that particular task. So limit your work in progress to maintain efficiency. And step 3 is adapt, monitor, and improve. This is critical. Utilize your metrics, your lead time, your cycle time, and other metrics that you've come up with that are important for your particular organization or you personally if you're doing a personal Kanban, and use those metrics to maximize your efficiency and the flow of those work items from to do until complete.
Context, and for you, your business partner is maybe a co-instructor and your wife and maybe somebody assistant that you hired, right?
Yep.
So you want to have an explicit working policy with your team members.
So like with a working agreement, you can really just kind of mold it to how your organization needs it, right? You can set your own policies within Kanban. Kanban's not strict about you have to do it this way and this way and this way. They're saying here's kind of a tool, a framework. You build what you need around it to make it work for you, right? I mean, that's kind of how it's saying.
Yeah, and then not only just for the organization, also for the team, because every teams are also different, right?
Yeah. So dynamics are different, and what you're accomplishing.
Yeah.
Is
So how do you know when work is ready? So that's kind of a little bit more like a definition of ready.
Sure.
That is a policy. How do you know when work is done? Does unit testing need to be part of it? Who tests the product? Is there a product owner role? Maybe they might not have a product owner. They might have something called a product manager, right?
Sure.
So whatever that is, they can make it very explicit and put it in the team room or somewhere where everybody can get access to these agreements. So then everything is flowing. Makes sense.
And it makes sense because Kanban's more of a mature framework, right?
Yeah.
It's not a lot of companies that are starting into Agile don't just jump right into Kanban because
100%.
it's more for like a mature team, a team that's been doing this a while. They get it. Things are flowing correctly. They're hitting expectations of delivering value for whatever they're doing. And then that Kanban really helps. But to a team that's just coming into Agile, that open policy or open door as to how you want to handle it, they may be overwhelmed. Like, we don't know how we want to do this.
Or they will have policies exactly to do what they're already doing, which is waterfall. Like a waterfall.
It doesn't change anything but adds a board with some cards, right?
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of people are just going to go to what they're used to, what they've done before. So it's really good for mature teams, I guess is the point. So in conclusion, Kanban is an awesome Agile framework that can really help mature organizations that have been utilizing Agile a lot and been doing it successfully in other frameworks, a way to kind of take a step back and breathe and really form the framework around their organizational processes rather than forming their organizational processes to that particular framework. But also don't forget, Kanban is awesome for startups, small team startups, as well as personal productivity. So I highly encourage, go out there to Trello, create a free account, create a board, start utilizing it for just your normal everyday stuff, whether it's for work or personal, it doesn't matter. But start utilizing it. Get used to creating cards and work items, moving them in progress, limiting those items, moving them to complete as you work through. Keep it very simple, and I guarantee that when you do that, it'll help you identify bottlenecks a lot easier, a lot more efficiently, and really help you to continue to create that incremental value that is so important in Agile. In the next section, we talk about another popular framework called Scrum. So stay tuned for that. Can't wait to see you there. As getting started with Kanban can be kind of difficult to know where to start, we've created a Getting Started with Kanban checklist. This is a simple one-page document that'll walk you through the steps that you should be thinking through as you create your first Kanban team or your Kanban process. This checklist is available for download on the resources on this particular lecture, so head out there, download, and enjoy.